Hello, everybody. Can you see me and hear me? Good morning. Good morning. Rainy Scotland. I think it just stopped raining here. Good morning. Can somebody please let me know if you can see me and hear me? And then I want to play this video for like a second and see if you can also still hear that. You can hear me fine. Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm going to play this for 1 second and let me know if you can hear that or if it's muted because it's not making like the volume thing go up and down. Anyway, okay. Let me know if you can hear this. Can you hear that? And is it way too loud? Please let me know. Because we're going to be playing this video. I found it very interesting. It's like the Idaho update video. We're going to be playing that. Okay, cool. And it's not, is that volume good or should I turn it down? It just took me like 25 minutes to figure out how to get it to play. It's not too loud. Okay, perfect. Thank you. What a screen to stop on. Hold on 1 second. Can't see the corner of this screen. That's not going to work. Hold on. Move this. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to play this video. Why can't I see the corner of the screen? And stop at certain points. We're going to be using Tarot Whispers and the Missing Variables decks. Okay, good. I'm glad it's working. All right, so let me start this. As always, this is an energy reading. It's all alleged, my opinion, not facts, all the stuff. Okay, let's do this. Let's start this, and then I'm going to kind of shuffle these as it's starting to play. And we'll see what happens. Are you sure that's not too loud? Can somebody let me know one more time that it's not too loud?
I'm Vinny Politan. The subject of my investigation is the murder of 4 college students in Idaho. It was a murder mystery that captivated the nation and is now the highest profile trial.
Hang on. Everything means something. I want to see something really quick. Where did he say?
I'm Vinny Politan. The subject of my investigation is the murder of 4 college students in in Idaho.
I forgot to listen again. Was it Ohio? Hold on 1 second. 1 second. What is Ohio known for? Buckeyes. Ohio. Oh, I know the reference. I wore an Ohio hoodie on a TikTok video, and it was like a big deal because everyone was tearing me apart, and then they ended up winning the championship. It feels like that slip up is pointing towards this reading eventually as we go, revealing some kind of major win. Like, would it be fair to say that slip up and me doing this reading with that slip up is pointing towards the 4 believing that they got some kind of win in this last court appearance? Queen of Pentacles. Interesting. The Hierophant. They got some kind of win. Queen of Pentacles. Oh. Queen of Pentacles has been Xana. The Hierophant would be the court. What's the win? 8 of Cups. Okay, so the 4 viewing something that was denied as a major win. Okay, let's keep going.
It was a murder mystery that captivated the nation and is now the highest profile trial on the court TV docket. And now new controversy surrounding DNA evidence. Here's the story.
Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee were 4 friends living together in an off-campus house at the University of Idaho. They worked hard and were all flourishing as students and having the times of their lives. They were popular, and their house was known as a gathering spot for fellow students. All of that tragically changed in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. Those 4 students were stabbed to death inside their home. The brutal crime shook the community and touched the nation, setting off an intense manhunt for a killer. Students were afraid to be alone on campus. Some of them never came back. Investigators from the Moscow Police Department joined forces with the Idaho State Police and the FBI, following every lead, every tip, and every piece of evidence. That
something important we don't know about. He's saying that the 2 FBI and the other entities came together. That's the King of Pentacles and Page of Pentacles. King of Pentacles would be the FBI. Page of Pentacles would be like them leading the lower investigators. 10 of Pentacles, something solid, something that can be built upon. Okay. This video references a couple times how we might not know very important things yet. So what is that going to be? What is the very important thing? Conspiracy theory, mind control in reverse, life insurance in reverse. Conspiracy theory, something generally not held by truth, mind control in reverse, life insurance in reverse. Something we don't know about yet. This to me goes back to Dylan's testimony. There's something in there. It's almost like there's something in, because this video, the ending of this video talks about the memory things that Ann Taylor's bringing up about Dylan. Conspiracy theory, mind control, life insurance in reverse. It's like the defense thinks they have a way to bait Dylan into revealing something that they feel like could go in their favor. But it feels like what the first Ohio slip up plus this is saying, the FBI and the other investigators have something that we don't know about yet that will help to alleviate any issues caused by Dylan's memory. Does that make sense? So like, the defense is like, oh, we have a way to bait an opening of that door that I talked about before, but we don't know yet that the FBI and other investigators have something that's going to make those memory problems be less of an issue. Does that make sense? All right, let me keep doing this.
An investigation took them across the country to Pennsylvania and led them to this man, a grad student at a neighboring university in Pullman, Washington. This accused mass killer has denied the allegations and claims to have an alibi. And now, new controversy in the case involving DNA samples from the scene. What does this evidence reveal?
This is a circumstantial case. Make no mistake, there's no direct evidence. There's no confession. There's no admission. There's no eyewitness who actually...
Hold on. Claims to have an alibi. The moon, the ace of swords, the ace of wands. Queen of Pentacles and Taylor. We, the defense, have a way. It's like, you know those little games that it's like a little parking lot and you have to move the cars a certain way to be able to get the other cars out because there's only one opening? This is that. It's like the defense is trying to put into place a way to pull something out, but they need to maneuver all the other cars, hypothetically, maybe not hypothetically, so that there's an opening. This may have something to do with the vehicle. No eyewitnesses who actually saw and identify the killer. An alibi, the moon, which is interesting because his alibi is that he was looking at the moon and the stars. Ace of swords, ace of wands. We have a new way to communicate something, but we have to maneuver those cards to get it to fall into place. Seven of Wands, the defense. All right, what is this about? I'll bite. What is it about? We need to maneuver the cars. Let me just pull a bunch of these out. Colt in reverse, because these would be the cars. So like you'd have to like move other cars out of the way to get these cars out, right? So what are the pieces that have to be maneuvered? Justice, karma in reverse. Plot twist in reverse. An expectation of how do I word that? An expectation of an improper procedure of justice, right? So like the defense needs to plan ahead for what they believe the prosecution is going to do improperly. It's almost like we're anticipating and waiting. If I'm the defense, I'm anticipating and waiting for the prosecution to get close enough to step in this mousetrap so I can be like, look, you can't move. Now you have to open the mousetrap. And the mousetrap is like the door that I referenced before. Does that make sense? Okay, so freedom in reverse, stranger in reverse, paper trail on its side. So paper trail's the bridge. Oh, okay, the cars. So the paper trail then wouldn't be able to get out, be revealed in court, unless stranger in reverse moves out of the way. So then, boom, this can go, right? But we have this Colt in reverse, a hidden group connecting stranger in reverse, which would be somebody we know. So the paper trail can't come out unless stranger in reverse, someone we know, moves out of the way, but that person's being protected by Colt in reverse. We expect justice to try and be evaded in an improper way. Freedom in reverse so that we can get Bryan in. It's Dylan's testimony. I know I keep going back to that, but it's Dylan's testimony. They need to maneuver the cars in a certain way, right? Because the defense needs to get something in Dylan's testimony to be out or thrown out. Fruit of the poisonous tree, it makes other evidence go away. Stranger in reverse, someone we know, DM, being protected by a hidden group, Colt in reverse. And the defense then expects that Colt in reverse to be privy to or a party to improper procedure of justice. Am I going in the right direction? What's this card? Red flag on its side. Warnings missed. Warnings missed about what? If the 4 could answer that question, like what warnings were missed, or what is the topic or category of like what the missed things would fall into? The fatal decision. One wrong move with devastating consequences. An informant with critical knowledge. Yeah, it's gotta, and it's like interesting because there's 5 faces in this. There's 4 of them. Bethany be the other one. Someone's silence conceals vital truths. I'm going to pull one card for each of these here. The fatal decision. What's the card for the fatal? He does have a duck face on, right? Oh my, that's the second time I stopped that in a very
Saw and
it's not much better, but okay. And then the fatal decision. Cleanup in reverse. I kid you not. I have to fall on the floor. Cleanup in reverse. The fatal decision. Waiting to call because there needed to be something cleaned up, which made a mess of the unfolding of events. One wrong move with devastating consequences. One wrong move with devastating consequences. Frozen preserved in reverse. a release. It's here, it's in one spot, and it moves. Cleanup in reverse. The cleanup that's hidden made a mess of the timeline. Frozen, preserved in reverse. A release of something. Making a mess by hiding, cleaning up something that's being released. An informant with critical knowledge comes forward. An informant with critical knowledge comes forward. Trash in reverse. Bringing something in. Bringing something in. Bringing something in. Or putting the pieces back together. Or something that almost wasn't a big deal ends up being a big deal. Breaking the case. Something that wasn't going to be a big deal ends up being a big deal. Breaking the case. A crucial lead that shatters the silence. Did somebody, is it possible? Oh. Trash in reverse. We thought we got rid of this. Red flags in reverse. Is it possible that someone has information about, like, if someone who gave an account of something was untruthful, but someone else comes forward with proof that that person was not being honest? That's what that feels like to me. About, like, the why or the how of something, a decision made. Someone's silence conceals vital truths. What truths are being concealed? What truths are being concealed? Blackmail paid off. 5D portal in reverse. Paid to do something low vibrational. Paid to do something out of ill intent. Natural causes in reverse. So that the first domino didn't get pushed over. I feel like this has something to do with the cleanup. All right, let's move on to the next one. Wait. A hidden agenda. Let me get one card for this. A hidden agenda shapes the unfolding case. A hidden agenda shapes the unfolding case. High stakes game. When ambition meets risk, they're playing chess on the bottom. Investments with deadly consequences. Hidden risks in plain sight. I feel like they have something. How do I explain what I'm getting? Okay. This to me is, there's something up with that testimony that the defense knows about but cannot just come out with because it's guilty knowledge. They need to position those cars in a certain way so that one car can come out of the lot, right? The opening. Once that car is out of the opening, it allows the defense to force or, like, push the prosecution to have to give out the explanation or the, like, defending of what came out from that testimony. So it's like, we need to make you defend what you're saying in this testimony, because that defense of it is what Bryan's side, the defense team, needs to pull out to be exposed. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. That's what I'm getting. Let me keep going with this.
Can identify the killer. Did not witness the killings. There is no videotape of the killings. It's going to be circumstantial evidence. So all of it has to be weighed by the jury. That's the bottom line in this case. So let's talk about some of that evidence. The suspect's attorney was speaking about evidence. We know this is a DNA-driven case. And there's some DNA that we haven't really spoken about in the course of our coverage of this case, and it came up in court. Take a listen to Ann Taylor, the attorney representing the accused killer.
What other explanation is there? The magistrate wasn't given a chance to ask that. She wasn't given a chance to ask that when she wasn't told about unknown male B, blood on the handrail. She wasn't given a chance.
Hold on. I just said like she's live and I'm asking her to be quiet. Okay. Unknown male DNA on the handrail. What would the 4 tell us about that? Unknown male DNA on the handrail. Unknown male DNA on the handrail. Look at that judge. He's just like not having it. He's not having it at all. Okay. Unknown male DNA on the handrail. 8 of Wands, communication, fast communication. Page of Cups, feeling like a fish out of water. Let me move this. 9 of Swords, something we're worried about. Unknown male DNA on the handrail. Someone is worried about that being communicated, fish out of water, because we don't have an explanation. And since we knocked the whole house down, we also can't go back and then provide a reasonable explanation. Like, you know how like if the house was still there and they didn't knock it down before trial, they could go and be like, oh, this is what could have happened. It's like they don't have that, so they're worried about that door being opened at all because they don't have an explanation, and that's kind of feels like why they're beating around the bush. Anyway, political. Okay. Fear in reverse. 9 of Swords. We're worried, but we're not afraid. Feeling like a fish out of water because we don't have an explanation. We have all these explanations for everything else, but if you zoom in on this one, big worry. But I'm not afraid. I'm worried, but not afraid. The big guns involved are worried, but not afraid. Because they can't go back and get a new explanation, and they definitely don't have one. Or they don't have one that they can provide. I'm worried, but not afraid. I don't want this to come out because I don't want to have to provide an explanation that I don't have and can't get. But if something happens, whoever that male DNA on the handrail is, I'm worried but not afraid. They have some kind of protection. Like, I don't want the trial to go that way, but if it does, I'm not afraid because there's no potential consequences for male DNA A. Because male DNA A has some kind of protection. Allegedly, my opinion, I would venture to say that they somehow do know who male DNA A is. And they're worried but not afraid because they don't want to have to make it harder to convict Bryan based off of that. But I'm not afraid that there will be consequences for said person. Allegedly. Okay. Accomplice partner. Okay, what's this card then? Oh, it's the title card. Okay, so I was going through the deck before this reading, getting everything ready. And I was about to take out the title card, and I was like, no, let me leave this in, because I literally had this conversation with myself before this reading. Anyway, because if it comes out, I'm going to do 4 corners, because it's called the missing variables. So what are the missing variables? I don't know if I wanted it to come out right now, but here we go. The missing variables about what we just talked about. Oh, Guess that's them. Okay. Oh, we're doing the car thing again. Okay, hold on. Kind of. Okay. Huh. Ended up getting 8. 4 times 2. Interesting. Okay. False. A false truth. A false truth. What's the false truth? Grandparent, elder in reverse, outer space. A false truth about not a long time connection out of the house. A false truth. Can't confirm. Yes. Caught. A false truth about a not long time connection out of the house. So that accomplice partner card, we did not know one another for very long. So male DNA A did not know or know of Bryan for very long out of the house. Can't confirm, yes, caught. Can't confirm, yes, caught, worried, not afraid. A false truth about not a long-standing connection outside the house. Can't confirm, but going the right way, caught. I feel like they know who that male DNA is, and they know that they don't want it to come out in court. But if something happened and it did, they'd be able to protect that person. They already took that into account. Child. Innocence. Innocence. They already know how to clear that person if it were to come out, but they don't want it to. Would this have anything to do with why the house is not there anymore? Breakup, divorce, separation, because the house could provide a connection. If that DNA gets pushed in court now, it's much different if they could actually go back to the house. All right, let's go to the next one.
Chance to ask about that when she wasn't told about unknown male D, blood on a glove right outside the residence. She wasn't.
Male DNA B, blood on a glove outside the residence. Male DNA B. Male DNA B. Hanged man, glove outside the residence. 9 of Cups. Interesting. Because that's a front door, and the front door was left open. Male DNA on a glove outside the house. Hanged man. Person's like chained or tied to the anchor. Tied to the anchor. Tied to the anchor outside the house. Tied to the anchor outside the house. Huh. Tied to the anchor. If you're tied to an anchor, it's not moving, it's stuck. The Chariot. Tied to an anchor outside the house. Movement. Two opposing forces working together, tied to an anchor outside the house. Would it be possible that that glove is one of the people who came to clean up? The devil. On its side. Oh, the devil on its side. So the devil is the bridge between what and what. So what did I say? Is it possible that... What did I say? That the male DNA outside the house was one of the people who came to clean up. The devil. And it's interesting because we have the front door here open, and then here we have the front of the house. So found outside the house. They're all outside the house. Chariot would be like when I'm leaving or when I'm moving stuff or when I'm taking stuff. Ace of Wands. So the devil is, the devil is the connection. This is very interesting. See the colors? It's like, this is like the fiery hell pit. And then we have the devil here who's like peeking in. And then this is like a battle scene here with like all that same coloring with the red, but like there's these people having fun in the middle. That would be the 4, not realizing they were in the middle of this whole big battle. Ace of Wands. And it's like the fire's in the background. The fire's not touching the wand. The fire's not touching the wand. If the wand is the glove left outside the house, the fire's not touching it. It's not someone who did something. It's someone who cleaned up. Can I have a couple of these? It's not someone who did something. It's someone who cleaned up. It's not something you did something. It's someone who cleaned. Oh, clean up. All right. Next part.
Given a chance to ask any of those questions.
Unknown male B, unknown male D, DNA found in 2 different spots. Male DNA found in 2 different spots. Brings us to the first question in our investigation. Where was the unknown DNA found? Where specifically, and what's the significance of where the DNA is found? It's an important question. Joining me to help us through all this, he is the news director at eastidahonews.com.
What is the significance of where the DNA was found? The World, the Lovers, and Temperance. What is the significance of where the DNA was found? The lovers, Ethan and Xana. The DNA found on the steps and outside. Steps and outside. Temperance would be the higher floor, so the upstairs where the girls were. Lovers would be Ethan and Xana, not the bottom floor, not top floor. And the world's completion. Male DNA on the steps. Male DNA on the steps. I'm guessing that if someone's walking up the steps versus if someone's walking down the steps and you touch something, your fingerprint would be different. It would be upside down versus right side up because you're not walking up the steps like this, right? What is the significance of where the DNA was found? Because it more than likely shows the direction in which that person was going. So if that is someone who should not have been upstairs, but the direction is up, then that means there's some weight or significance to that DNA that maybe wasn't being considered fully. Does that make sense? Like, so what is the significance of where the DNA was found? Something about the direction, the moon, the high priestess, something unseen that's intuitively picked up on. Something unseen that's intuitively picked up on. The direction of the fingerprint or whatever going up or down the steps. What significance would that hold? The trail of evidence. Follow the steps. Uncover the truth. Huh. Interesting. Well, A lead investigator gaining public recognition. I can't believe that says the trail of evidence, follow the steps. A case breakthrough creating public ripple effects worldwide. A survivor's story changes the public narrative. Whistleblower testimony that turns the tide. Clues from the past revisited with fresh perspectives. Clues from the past revisited with fresh perspectives. I'll just put it like this, allegedly. If they were to know who that DNA belonged to and that DNA was going in a direction in the house that would be suspicious because it shouldn't have been going in that direction, that may cause a bit of something that the defense could then try and capitalize on if they knew about it and could use it, which maybe they can't because that would be guilty knowledge. Does that make sense? Okay.
You recognize him. He's been covering this case and everything that happens out there. Nate Eaton is with us, and former homicide detective and host of the very popular The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Of course, it's Chris McDonough. Great to see both of you. All right. So, Nate, we're talking about DNA. Let's start first with the handrail. This is a handrail inside the home. We have some images here from Realtor.com. But to me, that is extremely significant in trying to figure out which handrail, because this is a 3-story house.
Yeah, it's a 3-story house, and the students were murdered on the 2nd and 3rd stories of the home. So you would have to.
Or like if they did talk to someone and someone gave them testimony saying, I only went here and there in the house, but then you find an upward or downward direction that they said they weren't. It feels like that's the significance to where it was found.
One would imagine if you're, killing these students, you'd have to use a handrail to try to get down or up. And remember, it's also the dark, Vinny. So it's dark inside the house. After this brutal crime is committed, it would be very possible, and it sounds like the police scrubbed everywhere for any sign of DNA, and they did find it on a handrail. Which handrail that was, they haven't said yet. Whether it was from the 3rd floor to the 2nd or the 2nd to the 1st, we don't know. But that is a significant place to find that DNA.
Yeah, Chris, I think if it's 2nd to the 3rd, to me that would be the most problematic potentially for prosecutors in this case, because two of the girls, Maddie Cayley, are murdered on that 3rd floor. You got to leave the 3rd floor. You get back to the 2nd floor because that's where he exited and also took the lives of 2 more people. So if it is in fact that handrail, because I don't know if the suspect ever went down to that 1st floor. So if it's the handrail from 2nd to 3rd floor, extremely significant, I think.
Yeah, no,
6 of Wands, Ace of Pentacles, 8 of Swords. Huh. 6 of Wands, something made public. Ace of Pentacles, something given, something offered. 8 of Swords as a trap. Something offered as a trap. Something offered as a trap. A offering of a public, a public attempt at offering information that would lead to a trap. So a public offering would be the court, like in court. A public offering, here, take this carrot, open that door. If we push hard enough on this, they're going to have to do something and say, oh, it's this person, but this person gave testimony that they weren't there in the house. Like that basic, not maybe literally, but that effect is what I think I'm picking up on. So like we need to say, here, explain this. And then your explanation opens this door and we're like, oh yeah, you want to explain all that too? that feels like this, but it needs to be Six of Wands public. It's not something we can file and then have you have a chance to think about how to maneuver out of it. This is like, we need to, like, in public be like, okay, you opened the door. Do you want to explain what's hiding in there, type of thing? Low vibrational in reverse, premeditated corruption in reverse. Because if it is, okay, so premeditated is interesting because it is him holding the knife, which is essentially the image of this case, right? But like, I'm not taking this as Bryan or any suspect's premeditation. I'm taking this as we're thinking ahead of how to put them, the prosecution, into a situation where we publicly give them something that they then have to try and explain. It opens the door to this closet, and not even corruption can help in that moment where you have to then explain yourself live. It feels like a baiting of sorts as it pertains to this topic.
I would agree with you, Vinny. And the other question then it has to come into play is, what type of blood is this? Is it transfer? Is it cast off? So there's a whole other set of variances that would come into play also.
So, Nate, as we try to recall the evidence in this case, there's no, we believe that he was dressed in all black, potentially wearing gloves, but if it's unknown male DNA, it wouldn't be any of the victims in the house. The blood would have to be from someone outside of that house, right? Because inside the home, it's women that are living there, young women that are living there, and of course, Ethan would spend time there with Xana.
Because if someone gave testimony that they saw someone else in the house earlier in the day or another time, but they only saw them in this and that space, it's a way to push the domino over on testimony they believe can eventually be fruit of the poisonous tree, but they need to get the whole thing to unravel.
Right. And we don't even know when the blood was left there. I mean, it's possible that it could have been left there before those students were killed. We don't know the amount of blood that was found on the handrail, but we do know for sure that the prosecutor has said they didn't send that blood into the CODIS network, which is the FBI network where they test things. They haven't explained yet why they did not do that. Of course, this is going to be a big issue that the defense raises and already is raising about, why wasn't that tested and who is that unidentified male? But you're right, we don't know the amount on the handrail and we don't know exactly who it belongs to. Could it have been a friend who was visiting a few nights before who, maybe got a bloody nose or, cut their hand while they were cooking? I mean, you could imagine any sort of circumstance where someone might have bled, it got on the rail, and it could potentially have nothing to do with the crime, or it could tie directly to what we're talking about.
Now, Chris McDonough, let's talk about a glove. Because you found a glove there, right? You were there a few days after all of this and spotted this glove, which was on the property of the home. I think we have another image where you can kind of circle it, or an arrow so we can see where it is. On the other side of the crime scene tape, tell us the story behind the glove that you found.
Yeah, so that was actually Thanksgiving Day, Vinny, and I was standing, as you can see, on the other side of the barrier tape there, and I looked behind the trash can, and there's that glove sitting right there in that debris. The interesting thing about it is I went back, also looked at some of the earlier news reports, a few days after the crime had occurred, and you can't tell for sure, but there is some footage that appears to show that glove also in that same position. And what I did is I called the on-scene officer over, pointed it out to him, and they subsequently collected it.
Now, when you looked at that glove, and obviously crime scene collected it, but from where you were you able to tell if there was any blood or anything?
So the glove, right, dropped or left, Two of Wands, as I'm getting ready to travel. I'm like in the planning stage of where am I going? 2, Ace of Pentacles, offer something. Where am I going to offer something? Because if that person was one of the cleanup people, I need to go give what I cleaned up to somebody. So glove left. 7 of Swords. Interesting. Betraying the integrity of the Knight of Swords, going into battle, the integrity of the crime scene.
Anything on that
I
glove?
feel like that glove is someone who
No,
cleaned up
unfortunately, you couldn't tell
or took stuff out
from
of
where
the
I was
house.
standing. I couldn't see anything.
Let me ask you, Nadine, do we know if it's this glove that Chris McDonough found or if there's a second glove involved here?
We don't know. They haven't specified which glove it is. Very well could be that glove. Could be another glove. It was wintertime when these students were killed. It was quite cold. So we don't know exactly which glove it was or the specific location of where that glove was found.
Now, so Chris, just to give a little more perspective on where the glove that you spotted was.
So I feel like, no, it's one glove because 2 of Swords came out and it's like, nope, not 2. And then 5 of Cups is like defeat. So wrong answer, not 2. The puppeteer, though. 1 glove, not 2. Or like not 2 instances of finding gloves. As I'm preparing to travel and offer something, 2 of Wands, Ace of Pentacles. The puppeteer. Give me cards on the puppeteer. If Ethan could explain the puppeteer as it pertains to potential alleged cleanup of the scene. Acting drama in reverse. Mask off. Mask off. They're not acting. They're not playing pretend. They're not playing pretend. Lies. They're not playing pretend. Lies? They're not playing pretend. Lies. Puppeteer. Oh. They're not playing pretend. Lies. Puppeteer. Inside female. Health issues. Memory issues. Below ground level. Downstairs. Puppeteer. Female inside the house. Not a second glove. Left when cleaning up. Would it be fair to say that Dylan has a direct connection to the puppeteer, the link, the one that I've referred to as the link the whole time, the woman behind the scene? Oh, I don't even want to know what that is. Okay, let's look. Can't pick it up. Accident. Looking in the rear view. Accident. Does Dylan have a direct connection to the link? Accident in the past. Oh. Does Dylan have a direct connection to the link? Rear view political. Looking back at political. Below ground level. I feel like there's a pass me down the lane of directions. Like this person tells this person what to do, this person enacts it, and I feel like the links in that chain involve not only a female inside the house, but also whomever left that glove.
Was found. How would you describe that area relative to the house and relative to how you would get in and out of the house?
So if the theory is that the suspect may have been parked out in front of the house, then if the suspect had come out of that house, it's about 30 feet from the front door going towards the street. And at the time the trash cans were out, so it would be in the direction of travel if that was the theory of where a subject would have been coming from. But again, like Nate said, I don't know if that is the glove that's in reference here, but it certainly did not stick into the environment itself. It stuck out pretty clearly to me as a former homicide guy.
And obviously there's snow on the ground. And I'm trying to remember, Nate, do we know when it snowed? I know it snows all the time in Idaho that time of year, but do we have any idea of when it snowed and whether this would be consistent with having been left there at the time of the murder?
I don't recall the specific weather that night, Vinny, or the next few days. I do know, though, that this was very fresh video that you're showing, that glove, that Chris took the photo of, and there was a bit of snow there. So it wasn't heavy snow. It's not like you had 1 or 2 feet of snow, which is sometimes possible at this time of year. So it looks like, that's just a quarter of an inch of that. But when that snow fell on top of the glove, I don't recall the specific weather forecast.
All right, Nate and Chris are going to help us out throughout the program. Coming up next, how will the unknown DNA impact the trial?
Is there another explanation here? I've got this sheath, but there are all these other things that if I know about them, matter. What's the other explanation? What's going on with this investigation?
The victim had been brutally stabbed multiple times.
Now, a jury.
Only on court, there might be a potential other person. Because I'm going to do it anyway because only on court TV. I said I wouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway because you brought up blood DNA of an unknown individual that was found, I think, on that handrail.
Yes.
Doesn't that necessarily not exclude Mr. Kohberger? What it may do is suggest there might be a potential other person in addition involved if you assume that blood was related to the victims and not some earlier event in the house.
If what the court is saying is exactly why the magistrate needed to know that. Is there another explanation here? I've got this sheath, but there are all these other things that if I know about them, matter. What's the other explanation? What's going on with this investigation? What's happening here?
So that's it.
9 of Wands in reverse, not the defense, the prosecution. The Hermit in reverse, extreme isolation from extra card in the deck, the Mob. Prosecution, extreme isolation of Bryan from the Mob.
Dan Taylor, who is bringing up the unknown DNA at the scene of this quadruple murder, blood on a rail inside the home, and then blood on a glove found outside of the home. Now, what we do know is that the knife sheath on the little snap, that's where the suspect's DNA allegedly is. Key part of the prosecution case. But now you've got 2 samples of unknown male DNA that hasn't been tested. They haven't figured out whose it is. So here's the question. We know pre-trial they're trying to use this to exclude evidence, but the next question in our investigation, probably even more significant, because I don't think that evidence is going to be eliminated. How will the unknown DNA impact the trial? Right? How is that going to play? How will it impact the jury, the defense, the arguments, the prosecution, everything else? Still with me, Nate Eaton, and joining me, you know him, folks, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, led the high.
It's interesting. How will the unknown male DNA affect the trial? This guy's pointing that way, and she's pointing that way. So it's like 3 of Wands would be the element of like the 2 of Wands to the 3 of Wands. We're planning, now we're moving. We're going this way, you're going that way. We're planning, then we're moving. The Emperor would be the prosecution. The Queen of Wands would be the defense. We're planning, then we're moving. We're taking action on strategy. Oh, okay. How will the unknown male DNA affect the case? Going forward, this is the prosecution strategy, and this is the defense's strategy. Okay, so going forward, the prosecution's strategy, 3 cards. Wild card, and I did not fill these in yet. So a blank card, blank slate. Shadow operatives in reverse, unseen players pulling dangerous strings. So they want to keep it that way. A shocking twist that reveals hidden clues. They're trying to prevent that. A case that takes an unexpected and complex turn, trying to prevent that. And the Keeper of Secrets coming out for the Queen of Wands. Master of Disguise with a web of truths carefully guarded. That's the defense. Queen versus Queen. Lawyer versus the Link. Shadow operatives in reverse. We want to keep what's in the shadows in the shadows. We want to lure it out. We, prosecution, want to keep what's in the shadows in the shadows. We, defense, want to lure it out. Wild card. Oh, I use this deck. So it's almost like the prosecution needs to keep any connections to anyone powerful outside away from an open door that could be opened through revelation of not all the way true testimony, right? But then the defense needs the prosecution to open that door. It almost feels like a tug of war to keep whoever's connected to this behind the scenes away. It's almost like if the defense gets too close to exposing anything that would be too close to the link, the prosecution's going to have to like self-destruct. Like, we can't let this part come out. If you find a way to get close enough without stabbing yourself in the foot while doing so, we're going to have to self-destruct. And I'm almost wondering if that's why all these like things are in place that could go wrong, but aren't going wrong yet, in terms of the unknown male DNA, in terms of the timeline, in terms of the chain of custody, in terms of the many other things, right? I'm almost wondering if that's like if we have to self-destruct, we can use this because there's something behind the scenes that needs to be hidden. What's this wild card? Witness in reverse.
Profile successful defense of George Zimmerman. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with the people that he's represented successfully. Mark O'Mara is with us. Mark, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Let me ask you this, Mark, off the top, like how 0 to 10 for this defendant, how big is the evidence that there are two samples of unknown male DNA, one outside, one inside a home that is occupied primarily, almost exclusively by women who live there? You know, sometimes a guy may stay there or visit.
Oh, it's probably a good 7. And the reason why is we can never forget that a criminal trial is nothing other than a question of whether or not the state has proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt to each and every one of those jurors. So that's the standard that we start with. And then in a case where there's just circumstantial evidence, Vinny, as you said earlier, this is a circumstantial evidence case. It's a unique term. What that means under the law is that when there's not direct evidence, but it's circumstantial.
What did he say? It's a question of whether or not they've proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's when these cards came out. Okay, so 4 of Swords would say that they have not yet. Like, obviously, because the trial hasn't happened yet, but like, if the only things that came out in trial were what we've already seen, I feel like this says the jury would not be inclined to believe that it was proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The Emperor came back out. That was just the prosecution in the last hand. That's the prosecution strategy. That is that look this way, not that way thing that we just had with the Queen of Swords, right? The 2 of Swords is a revelation of something. So, making the decision to reveal something. So it's not like, aha, you got me, I got to give you this now. This is like, okay, I'm planning to show you this because it's going to benefit me, the prosecution. Because right now, as it stands, not proven beyond a reasonable doubt with only what we know about. However, prosecution is like, but watch this. Okay, so watch what? Prosecution says, watch this. Watch what? What's the evidence or what's the deal? What's going on? Secret trip in reverse. So it's not a secret or you didn't go. It's not a secret or you didn't go. Secret trip in reverse. Thief in reverse. The prosecution has something. Secret trip and thief in reverse. You didn't go back. You didn't give it back. You didn't go back. You didn't give it back. Money. Freedom. You didn't give it back. Oh. Revelation of something, case not all the way proven beyond a reasonable doubt yet. Prosecution's like, hey, watch this. Two of Swords in reverse, a revelation of something, deciding to reveal something. You didn't go back, is what I said with these. Freedom and money. You didn't go back. You won't go back on your deal. I feel like the prosecution is looking at this like, okay, we know the defense is going to try to maneuver those cars to get the one car to come out to open the door thing. But for some reason, I feel like the prosecution's like, haha, watch this. We actually have these bases covered. We know what you're going to say about the memory. We know what you're going to say about the alcohol. We know what you're going to say about whether or not she knows what she saw and the timeline's wrong. They have something. It's almost like they want the defense to go in that direction in open court so they can be like, all right, let me shut this down once. We're done. They have something. But it's like we can't reveal this until they start pushing, because then we shut down all future pushing in that direction. They have something. You didn't give it back. You won't take it back. You won't take it back. Like a too much to lose. The investigator's haven. A solid foundation for cracking the case. A stable foundation for a case built on multiple critical clues. They have something. They have a way to explain it all away. And the defense doesn't know what they have yet with that.
Then the state's president.
Not like evidence that's like improperly put in. It's like a, I don't know, like an explanation or a connection of evidence that's already in. Or like a combination of it, or maybe it's like something that could be new, but only because it was brought up. That makes sense.
Presentation has to exclude every reasonable hypothesis of innocence. That's sort of the way we look at it. And when you look at that context,
the structural integrity of a theory under threat. The structural science experiment. Child in reverse. Experimenting with taking away innocence. Experimenting with taking away innocence. Experimenting with taking away innocence. Freedom. Experiment. We're rolling the dice. Because certain people made certain decisions to handle what happened in the way that they did, it's like you stick to what you said or there's a price to pay. Experimenting with innocence, are you going to be able to uphold this story, or are you going to be the one in trouble instead if this falls apart because of you and your testimony? Prosecution's like, watch this. They feel like something's going to happen that's going to make the testimony solid enough from Dylan.
now we have, Vinny, I know you've done before and I've done before, what we call the Soddy defense, S-O-D-D-I. Some other dude did it. And when you throw all of that into this mix, it's going to be very significant because the defense doesn't need to show anything other than the state has not proven the case properly to their jury. And this evidence is very significant because it shows an unknown. We know reasonable doubt can come from the evidence itself, lack of evidence or conflict in the evidence, and now we've thrown into the mix two other guys potentially who probably are not Bryan Kohberger.
Now, let me ask you, Nate, there's been no testing at all of this
Wouldn't
unknown
they know if
DNA?
it's Bryan by now?
Yeah, the prosecutor said, well, no CODIS testing. They haven't.
I feel like if that was Bryan, we would know by now because they'd be like, oh, it's going in this direction at this angle up the steps and it's this transparent. I feel like if it was Bryan, we would know. I don't. The fool in reverse. I feel like
Said it's the FBI lab. Whether they've done other sort of testing, we're unaware of. We do know that they sent that knife sheath, the thing you were just holding up, and that is how they were able to track down Bryan Kohberger. And the defense is going to make a big deal that one, it hasn't been tested, but two, they're also arguing that evidence of the unknown males that was never brought to the attention of the original magistrate judge who issued the arrest warrant. So they're saying because the judge did not have.
Why did they choose? I mean, it feels obvious, but what will the card say about why they chose to not reveal that part to the magistrate when going offering mob? Why did they not offer that to the magistrate? Ace of Pentacles, the mob. I feel like this card is a very good addition for true crime readings. Anyway, because it's not like a regular card, it's like an additional card in the deck. I think there's two. Anyway, because they didn't want to offer a group mob and Three of Pentacles. They didn't want to offer up the option for teamwork, which is, it feels very obvious, right? But like, at that time, this to me would say that one sec. Strength. Okay. This to me would say that like the prosecution would have had a harder time getting all this stuff for Bryan if whoever that male DNA belongs to was also an option. And by that, I mean, we have Bryan who doesn't really know them, provably. And then we have this other person who, if it's the two of them, the judge is more likely to be like, let's check out this person instead. They have more of a skin in the game potential. I feel like that's
that information. Bryan Kohberger should not have been arrested. There could have been other potential suspects out there.
Like, does somebody know, can they? I mean, I'm sure they can. Like, is it possible that they have that DNA figured out and they need to make it seem like they don't because the door that would open would be very hard to reclose and explain away. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's ways to get around it, but it allegedly feels.
The attorney here in Idaho said they're going to really nail this and, quote, muddy the waters. That's how they're describing it, to make it clear that everyone thinks it might be Kohberger because of that knife sheath. But what about these other guys? And what about this evidence that hasn't been tested?
All right, Mark O'Mara, let me ask you this. Yeah. They are claiming that he's
Has
innocent
to be a way they can
in
do
court.
it without them knowing.
Would you test it yourself? Find out whether it's through CODIS or through genetic genealogy. Would you take those samples and do anything and everything you could to track down whose DNA it is from the defense side here?
Well, first of all, we do not have any obligation like that. I don't like the idea of doing any of the states work for them, but let's face it, it is now an issue. I think it's incumbent upon the state to go now find out who that is. What
if they don't? What if they don't? Would you say, well, they're not going to do it? Well, they're not.
Okay, so he's asking this guy, if you were the defense, would you take it upon yourself to look further into this DNA, right? Knight of Pentacles, Two of Swords. Knight of Pentacles, someone that can be trusted. Diligence, right? Two of Swords, something that's not being seen. Why would you need to be diligent about something that's not being seen if there's not something being unseen that's untrustworthy right now? So like, there's something that cannot be fully trusted coming from the prosecution's explanation of the DNA, that if the defense were to look into it, they would see what's not being seen because what is being seen is not fully trustworthy. There's steps skipped or something. Let me pull one of these. steps skipped or something. In reverse, dangerous liaisons. A partnership. In reverse. Alliances forged in secrecy and suspicion. In reverse.
I'll do it, Your Honor. Would you?
Yeah, it's a little arrogant. You have to be careful playing outside what you need to do, coloring outside the lines a little bit. But yes, if there's evidence out there, absolutely. Because here's the thing. We know that they have Kohberger's evidence of the DNA on one thing. If there are two other people out there or one other person out there, they call them unknown B and D. That indicates to me that they've decided it's not the same blood sampling. Don't know how that's happened yet, but it seems to be that way, potentially. Yeah, I might take that shot. Now, don't forget, you get an opportunity as a defense to maybe get a part of that DNA and do it somewhat under the defense protection, right? That work product. I don't see it happening that way, but I cannot imagine the government going to trial in this case without having done everything that they could possibly do to get those blood splatters or blood tests done.
Why is the defense not taking that step? What is the reason? Seven of Swords. Strategy. Intelligent strategy preparation. Why is the defense not taking that step? It is an intelligent strategy preparation. Okay. Why is the defense not taking that step? It's an intelligent strategy preparation. What's the intelligent strategy? What is the intelligent strategy? Knight of Swords, someone in a military uniform, Knight of Cups. Is it possible it's not that they're not going to do it? Is it possible they need the prosecution to attempt to stand 10 toes down on bad info for a certain extended period during trial, so that if they then go and be like, okay, I can't trust you, now everyone sees we can't trust you, we're going to test it on our own now that trial's happening because of something that they said. So like, or something that comes out. So like if the prosecution was giving some kind of argument or evidence, and then the defense says, hold on. You know what? We better check that ourselves now. But like courts going on, there's some difference, an intelligent strategy that's being planned, not yet acted on. So it's not that I'm not doing this because I just don't feel like it. Not doing it is my intended, what I believe to be intelligent strategy. That's not yet in the action phase. It's in the planning phase. And look, I keep saying opening the door, door one or door two. What's behind door number one? What's behind door number two? If I was the defense, we would need the prosecution to be like, oh yeah, nothing to see here. This is how we got it. This is whatever they need them to say, blah, blah, blah. So that then they could be like, oh, that's what you're going with. Okay, let us test this now. It feels like it's not that they're not doing it. It feels like they're waiting for intentional timing. And I don't know how that works. I don't know if it's like, okay, we didn't want to test it. Now we're like locked out of it, and we need them to say something to let us back into the potential to do it. I feel like it's not that. I feel like they could probably do it at any time, but it feels like there's timing significance related to strategy. Okay, let's pull one of these. Timing significance related to an intelligent strategy, or at least a believed to be intelligent strategy. Conflict in the spotlight. What did I just say? It has to be an open court. Clashing motives, public outcry. It has to be an open court. Heated debate over police misconduct or corruption. Well, public protest tied to a controversial verdict. It's like we need defense would need prosecution to say this is it openly, so they could go back and be like, well, it's not. And now in open court, you said it is, but it's not, because you didn't think we were going to test this, or you didn't think we were going to do that, and now we did. Rivalries between investigative teams or journalists. Rivalries between investigative teams. You investigated this your way. We investigated it our way. You said this in open court. When we investigated it this way, turns out what you said there wasn't right. Tensions rise as hidden agendas emerge. Kidnapped, hands tied in reverse. Political in reverse. Is it possible that Ann Taylor is taking the approach of, how do I word this? If I'm Ann Taylor, I'm saying to the prosecution in my head, I'm making you think that I'm not going to do this, because in the way that I plan on doing it, it's going to make it so that you don't have time to come up with a counter thing, argument, evidence, whatever it is. It's like, I need a I got you moment, because you didn't think I was going to look into something that I'm purposely making you think I'm not looking into. Two of Wands. I'm not in the action stage. I'm in the planning stage. What's behind? Oh. What's behind door number 1 and what's behind door number 2? Kind of scared to ask, but we will. What's behind door number 1? What's behind door number 2? What's behind door number 1? It's a closed eye, because it's in reverse. So something unseen, a closed eye in door number 2. I'm not taking those too many. What's behind door number 2? Door number 1, war in reverse. The confidant. The personal connection. There are things I know, things no one else would dare admit, but the truth, it's never as simple as you think. What's behind door number 1? The war in reverse. Confidant. War in reverse, confidant. What's behind door number 1? So the defense is opening these doors. So what's behind door number 1? The confidant that's meant to help in the war. Is it possible that the defense has like an unexpected, the confidant, someone whose testimony can be trusted, the war in reverse? What's behind? Almost like someone who the prosecution would think would not help the defense, or who would help them. What's behind door number 2? Sad, emotional in reverse. The Avenger's path. A victim's relentless pursuit of justice fuels the story. What's behind door number 1? A confidant. What's behind door number 2? Victim's relentless pursuit of justice fuels the story. What is something that one of the family has said that could be something behind that door? It's like there's more to see there's fabric, right? Piece of fabric, and there's a string coming off the fabric, and one of the family members presented this fabric, hypothetically. And behind door number 2, you can pull on this fabric and have the whole thing unravel. That's what I'm getting. Okay, let's keep going. I don't know how we're only halfway through.
And looking at where it was found in this case, a glove and on a railing, how significant is that? And do you think the defense will tell a story based upon where it's found and how it's found?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if we have a glove and it has blood that is not Kohberger's, that's extraordinarily significant, because part of the reason why there's not a whole bunch of other evidence there is the argument that somebody was using a glove, or somebody was protecting their own DNA from being found. So blood that is not Kohberger's on a glove, I think, is extraordinarily significant. That would go from a 7 to a 9 at least. And the handrail is somewhat significant. Again, whichever one it might be, it is suggestive that somebody was bleeding, at least a little bit, going up there. If it's not Kohberger, then the question again remains, who is it? Because if it's not Kohberger, then there's somebody else who maybe should be charged in this case besides him.
And Nate, the defendant here, not only saying not guilty, claiming his innocence, I think they've used that word, not just not guilty, but innocence, has an alibi, or has claimed an alibi for that night.
Yeah, he says he was out looking at the stars, but he wasn't anywhere near the crime scene. His cell phone was off. There was no tracking. But remember, Vinny, the next day it was turned back on, and it did track near the home where this happened. And going back to the point with the glove and the DNA and whatnot, I just wonder if the prosecution is going to continually nail the fact that sheath was found under Maddie's body and comfort her there on her bed, and that it did link to to Bryan Kohberger. I mean, that's pretty strong, I would imagine.
That is.
I said in my head, there's a planning. They're talking about the alibi, potential alibi, and like where he was. 2 of Wands, planning stage. 8 of Wands, communication. They're in the planning stage of fast movement as it pertains to something with the alibi. And I said who, and then the Emperor came out, which was the prosecution. So I feel like there's something tracking wise that the prosecution can narrow in on more that won't look good for Bryan. Like right now, it's like, I don't know how this would work, but like we've submitted what we need to have this in evidence, but then we're going to zoom in on something, maybe not literally, but like coordinates or like time. There's something that the prosecution feels like they can tighten their grip on as it pertains to the alibi.
The absolute foundation of this case, and it might be tough without it. Nate's going to stay with us. Mark O'Mara, great to see you. Thank you so much. I know your time's valuable. We appreciate it. Up next, whose DNA is it? Of 4 University of Idaho students. It's a circumstantial case that includes some very compelling evidence, but the defendant is still proclaiming his innocence, and it is set to be a huge trial right here on Court TV. Here's the story.
4 students were brutally murdered in their home near the University of Idaho. Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana were great people with amazing futures that were taken away by a monster. The man accused of this horrific crime has denied doing it and has proclaimed his innocence. There is no eyewitness, no confession, and no direct evidence. It's a prosecution built on circumstantial evidence, which prosecutors believe is compelling, including DNA on a knife sheath found at the scene of the crime. But it's not the only DNA that's been recovered, as there is other DNA from unknown males found near the scene.
DNA, big part of this case, the foundation of the prosecution, but could be very important for the defense when you talk about this unknown male DNA. Let's take a listen to the accused attorney.
I'm not going to say too much because I already said this, but like I really feel like there's something in the male DNA that's like the direction, the location. There's something that it's almost like the prosecution needs to have plausible deniability, and that's why they're not able to go into certain things.
Attorney Ann Taylor and the judge talking about this evidence.
as to Mr. Kohberger. Now,
I feel like one's more important than the other, obviously. I feel like the glove is much less important. There's something to the direction of that handrail.
maybe, as you say, other people that creates concern or issues about that need to be investigated further. But I'm not sure that that diminishes the probable cause as to Mr. Kohberger if his DNA is found on a knife she found on or near the victim who was stabbed with said alleged knife that would have been in said alleged sheath.
I think the most prominent question is, how did that sheath get there? And I think when you ask that question, I think you can have.
That's a good question. All right, let's ask it. How did the sheath get there? How did the sheath get there? Teamwork, building something, laying the foundation for something. 7 of Cups, illusion, an illusion of a utilization of tools. Queen of Cups. Queen of Cups. Emotional investment. How did that knife sheath get there? So by there, I'm not sure if this is going in the direction of how did the knife sheath get to the house. I tend to believe that this is saying how did the knife sheath get to the location within the house that it was. It was brought into the house, right? And then how did it get from just being brought into the house to where it was left? I feel like this is saying that there's some bit of that being moved, Queen of Cups flow, movement. Moved into a place within the crime scene that would help continue to build the narrative using some kind of illusion. So if there's illusion, that's not where it was, that's where it was found.
Have DNA on an object at a scene.
And not for, well, I guess you wouldn't really know where you dropped it necessarily, but okay, I'm going to skip that part. Go ahead.
When you know about all of these other things and you don't find probable cause, because there are more questions than there are answers. And all of a sudden, this one thing doesn't look as big. It doesn't look as everything pointing to it when you have the context around it. The magistrate didn't have to have every detail of the case, but knowing how many attempts to find a DNA connection there were, and it didn't exist in Bryan's car, in Bryan's apartment, that there's no other DNA in there other than unknown male B that we know of for sure, an unknown male D outside.
D.
Okay, so these arguments are by the defense in an attempt pre-trial to get something done, to get charges dismissed, to get evidence excluded. It's not going to happen, okay? Let me clue you in. It's not going to happen in this case. The knife sheath,
was for
the DNA found on the snap, it's all going to be admitted. Now, don't forget the story behind this DNA, which has also been litigated. They ran the DNA through CODIS. Didn't get any hits because the suspect who was arrested, the defendant, had no prior arrests. His DNA was not in the system. So then they went to genetic genealogy. And through that, plus putting it together with the other pieces here, we're able to zero in on the defendant and ended up getting his DNA. And his DNA, once they swabbed him after arresting him, then matched here. But what about the other DNA? What about it? Brings us to the next question in our investigation. Whose DNA is it? Whose could it be? What do you need to know? How do you figure it out? Joining me, news director at EastIdahoNews.com. Been covering this case since the beginning. Nate Eaton is with us, and the laboratory director for Pure Gold Forensics. She has more than 20 years of experience in DNA analysis. Forensic DNA expert Susanna Ryan.
Whose DNA is it? I have 5 of Pentacles, 8 of Swords, King of Swords. Someone we... It's like someone who on the outside, you'd never place them into this situation because there's some upholding of social expectations of the person whose male DNA it is.
Okay. Suzanne, I'm going to start with you on this. 2 samples. Apparently, they're both blood. One from a handrail, one from a glove. Handrail inside, the glove outside of the home. What are you going to do? How are you going to extract it? How are you going to test it? What is the process for taking those samples and trying to figure out who they belong to?
Well, we're getting a profile. So we know that there's a profile, 2 unknown male profiles. So that means there was enough DNA. They're able to get a profile. Then the next step is trying to compare that profile to, first, you'd want to compare it to anyone in the house, anyone that had known access to the house, and see if that person can be included or excluded. And actually, it seems that at that point, that's where this sort of investigation into whose DNA is that, it stopped, right? Because they've already stated that these profiles were not entered into CODIS. So they were deemed ineligible for CODIS for, I'm not sure what reason, but they're not being put into CODIS. And
what are the reasons? Are there reasons based on what the sample is and the information you got from the sample that would prevent you from checking with CODIS? Or do you think it's more of just an investigatory decision because they have DNA from the knife sheath?
I think it could be a little bit of both. So the FBI controls the CODIS database. They maintain the database, and they have some very strict rules about what sort of profile is eligible for upload. So, for example, we don't ever want to inadvertently upload a victim's DNA profile.
They kind of worded the question again of like, why are they not looking at it? So I went to pull cards again to see what came out. 7 of Cups, 3 of Swords, the Chariot. 7 of Cups is that same fruit of the poisonous tree we keep getting. An illusion. 3 of Cups is like, it's making me like see all the symbol of heartache or symbol of pain is in the cup. Illusion. Why is the defense not looking into it? We're giving you the illusion of we're not gonna while we put poison in the drink, and poison in the drink would be the defense waiting for the prosecution to stand 10 toes down on something so that they can then go back and test it and be like, well, what happens if you're wrong? Okay.
You don't want to upload what we would call an elimination sample. So someone else that had legitimate access to that home. So it is possible that because this house was, it sounds pretty kind of open. Lots of people in and out, and maybe they're not entirely sure that these bloodstains are associated with the crime. So they're deeming them for that reason ineligible for upload. However, I find this a little bit problematic because, we had an unknown male profile on the knife sheath. And so, yes, that's obviously associated with a weapon and definitely going to be eligible for upload. But if we didn't have that, I can guarantee you that these unknown male profiles would be considered eligible for upload and searched. And so it is surprising to me that they're not at least taking that one additional step. Let's put it into CODIS and see if it matches. Because now you have this big question.
Okay, so if they did not have, hold on, let me think this out. If they did not have the DNA on the knife sheath, then the unknown DNA male profiles would have been searched more thoroughly. But because they had the sheath, it kind of protected those male DNAs from being looked further into. 2 of Cups is a connection or a partnership. Ace of Cups is the Holy Grail. So like big deal. And High Priestess came out, as I was saying, am I reading that right in my head? So I didn't know if I was understanding her. So technically, to an extent, the knife sheath's DNA helped the other unknown male DNA profiles from being really looked into thoroughly, which is interesting. The trail of evidence. Follow the steps, which is the same card that came out for the fingerprint on the handrail. Uncover the truth. connection, partnership.
Question of, well, whose DNA is this?
Yeah, I don't like unanswered questions. I'm a former prosecutor. Nate, Susanna was talking about what was going on in the house. Let's take a look at this. Some of the TikTok videos give us an idea of some of the activity inside the home.
Only when I lay in bed on my own, and I wake up and I see your name on my phone.
City talking, we taking notes. Tell him all to keep making posts. Wish he could, but he can't get close. OG so proud of me.
You've been a bad boy. Did anybody do their chores today? And disappear right after the song. So give me the night to show you, hold you.
And here, another one of the videos you can see, people over the house, some sort of a social event, a party. Nate, from your reporting, I mean, it's a typical college house, right? There's a lot of people coming in and out, and I would presume parties.
All the time, Vinny, all the time. I mean, how many college kids get home from class and they walk into their home and they don't know who a person is there because they're there to see another roommate. And this was a weekend and things were busy. So you could imagine it really could have been anybody. Someone could have gone up to that third floor and had a hangnail that maybe was bleeding a little bit and it got on the handrail. And somebody could have been wearing a glove outside if it was a cold winter night and, even had, chafed skin that was bleeding a little bit and it got on the glove. So, really, what Susanna was saying, I think is interesting. The fact that I would imagine you would want to get those items tested just to rule out people that you could, or to try to figure out who they belonged to. And maybe the prosecution, has a theory as to why they didn't do it, or they have some other sort of testing that they had planned down the line. Whatever it is, that is the big question. But yeah, it's a college house. It's a fun time. People are coming and going. A lot of people in and out. It could really be any guy that visited the home.
I just feel like yes, that could be the case, but this to me says like it's someone that wouldn't be that easily explained away.
Absolutely. Susanna, Ryan, thank you so much. Always appreciate your insight. Nate's going to stay with us. Still to come, does the case against the suspected killer rely solely on the DNA?
When there's a DNA match between the DNA and the sheath and Mr. Kohberger, isn't that probable cause every day and twice on Sunday?
When you go into a trial, you try to eliminate surprises.
Did he ever use the 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on Court TV?
Preclude a finding of probable cause when there's a DNA match between the DNA and the sheath and Mr. Kohberger. Isn't that probable cause every day and twice on Sunday?
Not in this context. Not in this context, because of the IgG work. Because that's the ultimate question that will be before a jury. What does that mean, right? What does a knife sheath at a scene mean? That's going to be the ultimate question. You're
killed by a knife. That probably means a lot.
It might.
So she is essentially saying, yeah, what is the weight of this? We're going to have to find out in court type of thing. King of Wands, Queen of Pentacles. King of Wands is gesturing away from the Queen of Pentacles. Queen of Pentacles would be Ann Taylor in this case. So the Tower, something drastic. The defense or the prosecution pointing away from something drastic. The prosecution pointing away from something drastic. What does that mean? Prosecution pointing away from something drastic within the home. Something's not as it seems. Communication, no regret. Water in reverse, to stop from drowning. Love, to not be in fear in the house. Something in the house is not what it seems. There's some kind of communication. I don't regret this because I have to do this to not be in fear and not be drowning as it pertains to something inside the house. I feel like that sheath was moved. Like it was not where it ended up when it started. And I feel like the movement of it, there's a way for the defense to like capitalize on something related to the movement of it. I don't know exactly how that works though. Maybe they need to expose the communication about it without knowing it exists. The keeper of secrets. Keeper of secrets.
It means a lot. It really means a lot, especially the IgG, the investigative genetic genealogy that was done from the DNA that was gotten from this snap on the knife sheath. Like, this is so significant. If this thing is not at the scene, if that knife sheath is not at the scene, I don't know what happens here. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Does the case against the accused killer rely solely on the DNA? Is that the whole case? Still with me, Nate Eaton, and joining me, former homicide detective, host of the Interview Room with Chris McDonough. It's Chris McDonough. All right, I want to show you guys this first because I think we need to establish this part of it. Gray Hughes from YouTube, Gray Hughes Investigates, on the show and talking about another piece of evidence in this case.
Does the case against Bryan Kohberger rely solely on the DNA? 9 of Wands, Page of Wands, 4 of Cups, the Magician. 9 of Wands is literally the defense. So the defense's position. Page of Wands needing to do a lot of discovery while climbing. Climbing discovery. Need to climb high to look down at the discovery, to look at the travel route of discovery. Does the whole thing depend on the DNA? The defense is trying to climb up and get a higher view on the method of travel, or like the procedural route of the DNA. 4 of Cups, the Magician, making something out of nothing. The defense needs to climb up to get a higher perspective, to look down and see the direction or procedures related to the DNA so they can make something out of nothing. So they can make something out of nothing. Fruit of the poisonous tree, because if you throw that out, everything else that you got from that gets thrown out. Making something out of nothing. Does it does it solely rely on that? I don't feel it does. However, I do feel like the defense believes that there's a way to get everything else thrown out if they play their hand the right way as it pertains to the how everything unfolded with the DNA. So like, let's say the DNA got there from the suspect and wasn't moved, okay? But like, if there's improper procedure, they still feel like they can get everything else thrown out because of said improper procedure, making something out of nothing. So does it depend solely on that? I don't think it does. I think that there's a lot of other circumstantial things that aren't as concrete but still exist. However, I do feel like they can make something out of nothing and get everything else thrown out if they get what they want to happen out of that intelligent strategy as it pertains to the DNA. Okay.
Let's take a look.
I look what time it is, 4:07 and 41 seconds or so. I think he parked at 4:08. All right. And then at 4:08, probably exits the vehicle sometime after that. And then 4:20, it leaves at a high rate of speed. But interestingly, in between 4:08 and 4:20, a knife sheath was left inside the house on Madison Mogan's bed that contained the DNA of Bryan Kohberger, who also drives a 2015 White Elantra.
So let's talk about it. When we were all covering this story when it first broke, and there was a search for a killer, it was all about the white Elantra, Nate. And we had no idea that this IgG was being used. We had no idea about the DNA at the time. It was all about, does anyone recognize this car? Does anyone know about this white Elantra? And we figured that was the key to solving the case, figure out who drives the Elantra. So how significant do you think, Nate, the Elantra is in this case versus the DNA on the knife sheath?
Well, I don't know if one will be more significant than the other. You would think that the DNA would, but that white Elantra did play a big part. I remember when that, the police released those videos and they were asking people to call for help. Anybody driving a white Elantra was on alert, worried that they could be called in. We don't know what other things they have, Vinny. I mean, there will be things that come out of this trial that will shock us, evidence that hasn't been presented.
I'm going to do that part separately. Okay, so what about the Elantra and its significance? The Hermit Death, 4 of Cups. What role will the Elantra play? I don't feel like the Elantra is going to play that big of a role because I think that there's something. I mean, obviously it'll play a role, but maybe not much as anticipated or expected. I feel like something's going to be watered down about the Elantra because they don't want some other element to be pushed. I wonder if it's the lack of what was not, or the lack of what was not in the Elantra. So like DNA and all of that. Like, I feel like the Elantra is going to be watered down as evidence because there's certain pieces of it the prosecution would rather not have to argue against. It's very hard to explain how someone who just did that to 4 people left nothing in there, right? So I feel like the Elantra is going to be downplayed, I feel. And I feel like the Elantra, how do I word this? I feel like the prosecution feels like pushing the Elantra part is like rolling the dice on a potential fruit of the poisonous tree to anything that came from that because of the misidentification of what vehicle it was to the public at one time. It's like I feel like they want to stay away from it.
Presented as it happens in every trial. We know bits and pieces. Prosecutors don't like to lay out their entire case before the trial happens, but I would imagine that a significant portion will rely on that sheath, that knife sheath that was found there, especially the location of it. It wasn't like found outside the house. It wasn't down the street. It wasn't in the kitchen. It was on Maddie's bed, the bed where she was killed. And it was the sheath that would house, as the judge said, the knife. Pretty significant if you're stabbed to that. So I think it will be significant, but I think there's a lot of other evidence that we don't even know about tonight that will come into play.
Chris McDonough, do you think there would even have been an arrest without that DNA? Do you think they could have caught him?
I think they were on the trail of Kohberger at the time, obviously with, who had a white Elantra in the area, in the environment. And then, of course, you start playing into the digital footprint and, the phone pings and the CAS team from the FBI getting involved. There's technology today. One of the technologies that a lot of people are not aware of, it's called Gladiator. And it's an FBI technology that you can actually put a phone really right where you need it to be if that individual was in that circle. And I think we get a clue as to how much evidence they may have by the fact that the prosecution has presented, 25 experts. They've revealed 25 experts, and the defense is challenging 22 of them. So
He's saying they can really zoom in on where someone was with the gladiator thing. So I have the Chariot, which would be movement. The 8 of Pentacles would be like a plan. It'd be work. It would be putting all the pieces together. And then the Queen of Cups, the in the box is the crown. So like the address of the house. It's almost like the prosecution is missing something that would make it feels like their identification of the location is not going to stand up as much as they're intending it to because there's something that's missing. Like, okay, it says the car is here, but if we had video of it, it's like there's something missing in what the prosecution thinks that they're going to be able to prove about the vehicle. And I feel like it's because of something that hasn't yet come out. Because he's talking about the stuff we don't know about yet. It feels like it's something to do with that. A betrayal unveiled. Trust shattered, leaving chaos in its wake. Something they don't yet reveal about the location. Almost like because of the prosecution trying to push something so hard, they end up stabbing themselves in the foot, hypothetically. It's like you push so hard on this, now in open court, it goes against you because of the way you pushed it. And it has something to do with the location data.
So that's going to tell us a whole bunch. I mean, you know that more than anybody in your experience.
Now, there's also a quasi-witness, I would say, not someone who saw the actual murders, but someone who we believe saw the killer. One of the roommates who survived all of this. This is from the probable cause affidavit. DM, that's the roommate, stated she opened her door for the third time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. DM described the figure as 5 feet 10 or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. Now, that seems significant, but I want you to take a listen to Ann Taylor talk about that witness.
Bushy eyebrows. Eight of Cups, Queen of Wands, Four of Swords. Four of Swords to me would be like Ann Taylor pointing and bringing attention to Dylan's state. Eight of Cups, but like in a way that's not. It feels like as it pertains to this part, it feels like there's a win for the prosecution. Like the defense is going to go on that route of like, she said this and she's memory problems and she said intoxication, but it feels like this ends up being a win for the prosecution, almost in a way that makes people go like, oh, we're just going to accept that answer. Like there's something weird like that feels to come out. Below ground level, flight, air travel in reverse, mind control in reverse. Below ground level. Flight, air travel in reverse would be another instance of below ground level, because if you're the opposite of the sky, you're the ground. Breaking ground, mind control, controlling the narrative. I almost feel like, and we'll confirm with this one, but like, there's something about testimony that could be more easily disproven if the house was still there. I don't know if that's like sound dynamics. I don't know if that's like, it's like, below ground level. Keeping something hidden in an unfulfilling way, pointing the fingers at the state of mind, but being unable to control the narrative. What's the topic of what we need to know about what's being hidden as it pertains to what's up on the screen right now? Trail of blood. A violent path leading to the truth. Testimony clouded by fear or ulterior motives. A witness caught between two dangerous forces. Evidence tampered with or destroyed. Unreliable accounts in a high-stakes case. Whistleblowers' hesitation to come forward. Cracks in an airtight story begin to show. Layers of deception obscure the truth. truth. The truth is that layers of obstruction, what does that say? Obscure the truth. I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a moment where we're going to be watching, if we're able to, and be like, how are we accepting that as an answer?
Remember, the issue was whether or not one of the victims ran downstairs. And she didn't say it once. She said it 4 times in a row in the very first interview. And that just didn't happen. It just couldn't have happened. And that was not told. In fact, that statement was brushed over and withheld from the magistrate. About the memory issues in the second interview the same day, there are 2 references to not remembering. A couple of days later, there's the third interview, and there's references to not remembering, being drunk, a statement, I don't know any of it. Like half the stuff. I don't know if it's a dream or if it's real. That's at page 399. At page 406, I don't know if this was real or in my mind was just like playing with me. But from what I think I heard, someone was crying in the bathroom.
The simple answer is investigators knew what she saw was real. And we know it wasn't a dream because they found the evidence discovered the next morning. That general description, which is what was provided in the PC affidavit, was consistent throughout all of her interviews. She described seeing someone wearing all black, a mask with only a portion of their face showing and visible. This person was male, white. She heard a voice that was not something that she recognized. The person was a slim, skinny, lean build. And the person was taller than she is around 5'8".
Nate Eaton, one thing that the prosecutor doesn't mention there, which all of us jumped on, was the description of the eyebrows, like that.
Okay, so Wheel of Fortune, the Lovers, 9 of Pentacles. They previously posed the question of, does everything rely on the DNA evidence? And I said, I don't feel like it does. I feel like there's other circumstantial things, but I feel like if they can get that thrown out, it gets everything else thrown out. I feel that same thing is true about Dylan's testimony. I feel like if they can bring enough reasonable doubt to something within that testimony, it makes other very crucial pieces not be able to be used. It's like making the choice to roll the dice and single out the importance of that. The Avenger's Path. A victim's relentless pursuit of justice fuels the story. Deep emotional truths come to the surface. Making a choice. It's almost like when you have to like you have to like kind of admit certain wrongdoings to explain away things. It almost feels like that's part of the deal here, that we don't know what's going to come out about it yet. Like a deal for this to go a certain way, but not till open court, like being discussed, if that makes sense.
To me, that was a big one. You know, because his face was covered, whoever it was, but the eyebrows at one point, at least, were described in the affidavit as bushy eyebrows. How significant, how important do you think the roommate's testimony will be?
Oh, it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. And think of people that have been through trauma. For the defense to say, oh, she changed her story, she doesn't remember this or that or whatever. Well, a traumatic, horrific event has just happened. She could have been scared for her life. Of course, she's not going to remember every single detail. That will be the witness that will answer a lot of questions, we hope, we think. But also, Vinny, there's other witnesses we don't even know about. Are there people who saw Kohberger that night, you know, at a gas station or at a grocery store or whatever that we don't know about, that they're going to call to the stand, that won't talk at all about DNA? But we'll talk about what they observed that evening when they saw him. That is a possibility that we could see. So the roommate testimony is going to be huge. And we haven't heard from her. She has not spoken publicly to anybody.
Yeah. Chris, do you agree?
Yeah, I think the impact is also she's going to put one person in that house.
That is extremely significant, right? If you talk about 2 samples of unknown DNA, we've been talking about that. There's only one person that she sees. That could be absolutely huge as well. Big thank you, Nate Eaton.
Okay. Let's end this with, oh, that's the wrong screen. Okay. Let's end this with just like a bunch of cards as it pertains to what we can expect with Dylan's testimony. 3 of Swords, 10 of Cups, Page of Swords. It's like I would word this as it's going to feel scripted in a way that looks intentionally unscripted. Like it almost feels like there's a lot of errors that are on purpose that are scripted into what's meant to be said. I don't know exactly why. Corruption in reverse, to hide corruption, final ending. To hide corruption and put an ending to people going down the rabbit hole. I feel like there's some kind of big admittance coming from Dylan. I don't, and it's almost like that's meant to put to bed any questioning of why things unfolded the way they did in the timeline. Weapon in reverse, murder for hire, rival competition. Almost like because if the DNA falls apart, we need to be able to use this instead to prevent the fruit of the poisonous tree from unfolding with everything in the DNA. All right, give me one final card. My brain is getting tired. Give me one final card. We're going to wrap this up for now. Affairs of interest, high stakes scandal, entangled in personal relationships. I feel like Dylan needs to stick to her original testimony because if she doesn't, someone that she's connected to personally is not going to be in a good position. Okay, that's all for now. All of this is alleged, my opinion, not facts. Oh, I almost accidentally ended that. Did I end it? No, okay. Thank you all for being here. I will talk to you all soon.